What's up, fellow bike nerds? Welcome back to the Weekly Rewind, where we catch you up on all the hottest cycling news from the previous week. Last week, we saw not one, not two, but three new hardtails get released, and I'm stoked to tell you more about each one, as well as get you up to speed on actually quite a few new products that came out last week. But before I get there, some quick housekeeping. Super excited to share that the Weekly Rewind is now a podcast that you can listen to on Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you do happen to be listening in right now, then for one, welcome. And secondly, if you wouldn't mind giving us a 5-star rating, that would be awesome. That'll just help other people find this podcast as it's getting started. Now though, let's go back to those hardtails. The first one we're going to talk about is the new Orbea Alma. At first glance, the Alma looks like any other modern cross-country hardtail. That is, until your eyes catch the distinctive kink in the seat tube as it bends sharply forward to intersect the bottom of the down tube. Orbea calls this their X-Factor seat tube, and it, combined with the new slimmed-down seat stays, are designed to help eliminate the transmission of bumps and vibrations during seated pedaling. Now, one downside to this design is that it limits the space in the front triangle for water bottles and other storage mounts. Orbea has worked around this with some clever raised mounting points that allow for a water bottle and long travel dropper post. Another handy feature is the removable service window under the base of the down tube, making cable management a bit less painful. What's even more impressive is that even with all these added features, Orbea has still managed to keep the weight pretty dang low at just 1,080 grams for a medium frame. They've also gone ahead and bumped up tire clearance. Now you can fit 2.4-inch rubber and increased front travel, now at 110 millimeters. Sadly though, much to every home mechanic's chagrin, it now gets some dreaded headset cable routing. That said, the bike sure is a looker, especially with Orbea's in-house one-piece carbon cockpit found on the higher-end bikes. There have been some minor geometry changes as well, with shorter chainstays, a steeper seat tube, and longer reaches across all four sizes. The Alma is available in 5 different complete bikes, all with that same carbon frame. It starts at a relatively reasonable $2,999 for a bike that's equipped with an XT group set and a RockShox SID Select fork. But Orbea wasn't the only company to release a cross-country focused hardtail last week. Marin launched an updated version of their Team Marin. You're not going to find any funky seat tubes or drop stems here though. Marin's approach to this category is refreshingly simple. The aluminum frame gets a traditional double triangle design with ever so slightly dropped seat stays for increased compliance. It also gets new hydroform tubing to maximize strength in critical places and remove unnecessary bulk in others. Elsewhere, the changes are a bit more subtle. The cable routing is now fully internal. They've also gone ahead and removed the seat tube mounting points, presumably to fit longer travel dropper posts, and ditched the flat mount disc brakes for a more versatile pair of post mounts, allowing for the use of larger rotors. All this hints at a bike that should be much more capable than ever before, and the geometry points to that as well. Reach and stack have increased across all sizes, and when spec'd with the stock 120mm fork, the head tube angle is slackened half a degree, now down to 66.5. If ever there was a down country hardtail, it probably would be this. And best yet, it's super affordable. You can get the base model Team Marin 1 for just $1,500. Our third and final hardtail is quite a bit different than the last two. In fact, it's a bit of a stretch on my part to call it a hardtail at all, but hey, it's got a suspension fork and a rigid rear end. The bike that I am talking about is the all-new Chromag Signature. This is Chromag's first aluminum dirt jumper and has been built from the ground up to suit the most progressive and technical slopestyle athletes out there. When compared to the Monk, Chromag's steel hardtail, the Signature weighs 2 pounds less, has a higher bottom bracket, and a higher stack. This makes for a more maneuverable bike, perfect for, I suppose, 360 triple downside whips, and probably kickouts for the rest of us too. Speaking of geometry, the Signature is available in 2 different frame sizes, regular and long. And personally, as a taller rider, I love it when companies make their dirt jumpers in a slightly larger size to compensate for the rest of us. Now, in addition to the weight savings, that 6066 aluminum frame also increases stiffness. The rear triangle is about as beefy as it gets, with boxy tubing and a healthy looking chainstay and seat stay yoke. This is great for riders at the pointy end of the sport, but Chromag isn't afraid to shy away from the fact that many more casual riders will be better off with the more forgiving Monk, which will continue to remain in production alongside the Signature. So whether you're looking to get your first slopestyle podium or just trying to qualify for the mains at your local cruiser category, the Chromag Signature is an awesome option. Frames start at $775, and you can get the complete bike kitted out with Chromag parts and a RockShox Pike DJ fork for $2,200. Moving on from the simple hardtail to our next bike, which really is a marvel of engineering in and of itself. And that is the Zocalo Visoko, and I apologize for that pronunciation, I'm sure I butchered it. This 170mm high pivot bike uses a two-chain design, one to connect the drive gear to the idler, and the other going from the idler to the cassette. But in this case, the primary drivetrain is hidden inside the seat tube. If you're listening in via podcast right now, would it be a bad idea to, assuming you're not driving, pause this thing and go ahead and Google this bike, because honestly, it is something to behold. The system works by starting with a pair of MTB cranks that spin a 14-tooth gear that in turn rotates the idler, all of which are hidden from the elements inside the frame, but can be adjusted via an external tensioner. Obviously, that internal drive system is the biggest eye catcher on the Visoko, but it's not the only trick this steel frame has up its sleeve. It also has some pretty trick interchangeable dropouts that allow you to alter chainstay length from 422mm all the way up to 468mm. Speaking of geometry, up front is a 63-degree head tube angle when paired with a 180mm fork, but is dual crown compatible with up to 200mm of front wheel travel should you choose. If this sounds like something you'd be into, then you could order a frame in one of 4 sizes for €3,900. But it wasn't just mountain bikers having all the fun last week. We saw a couple new road bikes come out as well. The first of which is the Quintana Roo service course. Quintana Roo may not be the most common name in the road scene, but they've had a long history of success in triathlon and Ironman racing. The service course is their take on an aero road bike, and already they're making big claims, saying it's, quote, the fastest UCI legal version of such bike on the market. More specifically, it's 3.6 watts faster than its predecessor. And most of this comes down to some new tubing shapes. The front of the bike is a longer, narrower head tube that connects to a deep down tube. As is becoming the norm these days, the seat stays meet up with the front triangle about a quarter of the way down the seat tube. It also gets some generous 36mm tire clearance, is UDH compatible, and the top tier SRAM axis build weighs in at 16.1 pounds or 7.3 kilograms. Geometry is definitely on the more aggressive end of the spectrum, which we'd expect given the bike's aerodynamic nature. It's also only available in just 4 sizes. That said, Quintana Roo offers a ton of different bar, stem, and crank length options when ordering the bike. Speaking of customization, there are also dozens of different group set, wheel, and cockpit combinations you can choose from when ordering. It's essentially like building a bike up from the frame. Lastly, prices start at $4,599, and you can order your own through Quintana Roo's website. The last bike that made the cut from last week's long list of new product releases is the State Bicycle Co. 4130 All-Road. State, never being one for creative names, left little to the imagination with this title. One of my favorite things about this unapologetically simple bike is the raw phosphate finish that proudly displays the clean steel welds and braze-ons, looking like a bike that costs well over its humble price tag. The updates to their long-running all-road line of bikes include UDH compatibility, additional storage mounts on the fork and frame, and wider tire clearance, now up to 45mm. But I haven't even gotten to the best part yet, and that's the price, which is just $999. That's more than a lot of companies will charge you for a steel frame. For that, you get your choice of either a flat bar or a drop bar setup, the latter of which gets a generous 33-degree flare. The base price also includes State's in-house 12-speed drivetrain, cable-actuated hydraulic disc brakes, and upgraded higher engagement wheels. For those looking for even more performance, State, similar to Quintana Roo, offers a lot of different upgrade options that you can add on when ordering. And to be honest, I really can't think of a better, more cost-effective way to get into gravel or adventure riding than the 4130 All-Road. And it's awesome to see State's continued commitment for making rad, character-filled bikes on the cheap. Moving on now from complete bikes to components. I'm stoked to finally get to tell you that Shimano has released a new drop bar version of their Q's group set. In case you're unfamiliar, Q's replaced, and in our opinion, seriously upgraded, Shimano's lower tier flat bar drivetrains a couple years ago. We actually did a video comparing Q's to Dior, and if you're watching on YouTube, I'll leave a link for that in the description. Ever since then, we've been expecting a drop bar compatible setup to come out, but we had to wait nearly 2 years to get one. But today, it's finally here. It's available in both a 1x and 2x system, and is compatible with a 9, 10, or 11 speed Q's derailleur and cassette. Visually, the shifters closely resemble Shimano's mechanical 105 shifters, and we'd guess that other than the reduced gear count, they'll function very similarly as well. In addition to those shifters, Shimano has also released a Q's branded front derailleur, 2x chainring and crankset setup, and some flat mount disc brakes, meaning you can now have a full Q's group set on your gravel or road bike. Lastly, we also got a new short cage Q's derailleur designed specifically for 20 and 24-inch bikes. This little guy is compatible with 9 or 10 speed 11 through 39 tooth cassettes and is said to improve ground clearance by 30%. It's awesome to see the expansion of the Q's drivetrain into the world of drop bar bikes. And the cross compatibility between all these components should make upgrades and repairs down the road that much easier. Shimano has also announced that they're already working with several bike brands, including Trek, Salsa, Marin, Specialized, so we should be seeing these parts come out on OEM bikes pretty soon. As always, we'll do our best to get one in for a review, so stay tuned for that in the future. Let's stick in the world of drivetrains just a bit longer because I've got a quirky pair of pedals to tell you about. These are the 9.8 inverse pedals, which quite literally inverse the typical pedal shoe interface. The pedal itself looks like it could have been cut from the base of a 510 platform shoe, completely covered in black, dense rubber. We've seen pedals like this with rubber, foam, or even skateboard grip tape sold and targeted towards, cruiser bikes or casual commuters. This is the first time we've seen one pointed directly at the mountain bike community. And the biggest difference is that when 9.8 sells you a pair of inverse pedals, they also sell you some thread-in pins that are designed to go into the sole of your shoe. You can also buy a studded cleat that attaches to a standard clipless shoe and would make that compatible with these pedals as well. 9.8 claims that the new system provides just as much grip as a conventional design, but without the risk of shinners and it decreased pedal strikes on rocks and roots. Obviously, things get a bit more complicated when you get off the bike. Now, in 9.8's marketing, they say that those pins are going to give you more grip when walking, which may be true in some surfaces, but places like sandstone or granite, or of course, inside a building, they're probably going to be a little less than ideal. These pedals are also not light, come in just under 600 grams for a pair. Speaking of new and exciting ways to do things, Wolftooth Components just released what they are calling the smallest hand pump ever made. The 30cc encased pump is smaller and lighter than a CO2 cartridge, and can fit a tire plug kit hidden inside. My first thought when I saw this thing was how crappy it would be to actually have to inflate a tire with one. But Bike Rumor actually tested it out. We're able to inflate a 29 by 2.4 inch tubeless tire from completely flat to 18 psi in less than 2 minutes. Seeing as it's coming from Wolftooth, it should be no surprise that the build quality is on point as well. It gets the same textured aluminum body as the rest of the encased pumps, a press-fit valve lock, and Envirolock weatherproofing as the existing encased pumps. The 40cc and 85cc are still available, and both offer even more storage options. But if you're hard pressed for space, then the new, smaller pump is definitely worth checking out. You can get this new pump in your choice of colors, so long as it's black, for $64.99. Our last new product highlight from last week comes from Fox. This is the new Speed Frame helmet, which has already taken the top spot on Virginia Tech's highly acclaimed helmet rating test. The new Speed Frame gets a reworked design from the ground up, and now gets quite a bit more ventilation, as well as a bit of an edgier, more sculpted look. The visor connects to the helmet a bit higher and further up, allowing for sunglass storage, but I'm not sure if I'm fully sold on the look yet. But of course, that's kind of beside the point. So let's skip ahead and talk to the important stuff, which is safety. Now, one of the main reasons why this helmet was able to score so well in Virginia Tech's test was its new MIPS Integra split system. This has been used in Fox's Pro Frame full face helmet, but it's the first time it's shown up in a half shell. The Integra split system uses 2 different densities of foam connected with an elastomer, allowing each to rotate freely from the other. Now, I wouldn't blame you for thinking that all these safety features are going to add a good bit of weight, but that Speed Frame RS weighs just 400 grams, and the Speed Frame Pro is even lighter at 350 grams. You also get some other nice features, including a Fidlock buckle, a BOA ratchet fit system, and integrated glasses storage under the visor. Prices range from $110 to $280 and are available to purchase now. In addition to those new products, we're also treated to not just 1, but 2 new patent updates from SRAM, both of which hint at some drivetrain updates that could be pretty disruptive down the road. The first and definitely most polarizing of the 2 is a front derailleur system that attaches directly to the crankset. The design looks to be fully wireless with an Axis battery mounted to the outer chainring. To downshift, 2 paddles will rotate out and guide the chain off the larger ring and onto the smaller. Shifting back up gets a bit trickier. There's a creepy looking little contraption sitting between the 2 rings that holds 5 angled fingernail looking pegs. When activated, this engages with the chain and lifts it from the smaller ring onto the larger one. The second patent is one that I personally get a little more excited about. I think definitely has a stronger chance at being a reality in the near future. And that is for a new cable-actuated direct mount rear derailleur. This is something we've been hoping to see for years, and I've actually got a few glimpses of real-world prototypes in the past. The construction of the new derailleur seems to closely resemble that of the current transmission models, and notably continues to work without a B tension adjustment screw. Interestingly, most of the patent is actually just explaining how the new derailleur would be set up, as the constant tension from the cable will make the process a bit trickier than on current electronic derailleurs. Unlike that crank-mounted front derailleur, we do expect to see this guy coming out in the near future, maybe as early as this year. And when it does, you can learn all about it right here on the Weekly Rewind. So you might as well just go ahead and subscribe or follow right now to make sure you don't miss it. Lastly, we like to wrap up the Weekly Rewind by sharing with you something that got us stoked, and we hope will do the same for you. This time around, it's an interview conducted by Jeff Kendallweed with Brent Stevens, a man who's been rumored to ride nothing but blue steel, the massive jump line nestled in Bellingham, Washington's Galbraith Trail Network. The video shares the story of Brent's background in the legendary Austin, Texas BMX scene, his transition onto big bikes, and what he's up to now. You'll have to watch the video for yourself on Kendallweed's YouTube channel to find out if his one trail only reputation is true. That is a wrap for this week's episode of the Weekly Rewind. Thanks to all of you for tuning in, especially those of you who are listening via podcast. If that's you, do us a favor by giving us a 5-star rating and following the podcast to help other people find it out. We'll see you in the same place next Monday for another episode of the Weekly Rewind. And until then, remember that bikes are for everyone. Have fun out there.